meeting is being recorded and summarized.
Hi, Nick. Hi, Laura. Hello. Welcome to this evening's session. My name is Renee Angelo Mock. I am a facilitator for the day. I am a master trainer of mentoring practices and thrilled to bring you this content. Tonight's topic is becoming a better mentor, honoring youth voice, and building power. We'll talk a little bit more about what that all means in just a little bit, but feel free to continue to introduce yourselves in the chat. So if you're not familiar, who's putting on this training for you today? It is Mentor Maryland DC in partnership with the Y, as you saw on the previous slide. We are an affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. So there are many affiliates across the US. We are your regional one for my friends in Maryland and DC, and we organize around the cause of mentoring. So uplifting the urgency of mentoring, which is the quality and quantity of mentoring, right? We want to ensure that there are enough caring adults for young people, which data right now says that there are not, and that the relationships, that mentoring programs and relationships that we find, in our neighborhood are those natural relationships between adults and young people, that those are of high quality as possible. So we are your local mentoring expert, and we aim to support you, programs, and mentors in many different ways. And let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So here are our offerings. These are all clickable links. I promise to send you the slides and recording and things like that within a week, and you'll be able to click on all of these. But like we just mentioned, we are your connection to the National Mentoring Partnership, who created the Becoming a Better Mentor resource, who puts on the National Mentoring Summit, for those of you who may have been there just a few weeks ago. And they do all kinds of research and things like that about mentoring and mentoring best practices. We offer no-cost technical assistance to the National Mentoring Resource Center, which is an amazing resource for programs that serve youth under 18. To work with one of our expert consultants about what's going on in your program and how we can help make your program better. If you're not familiar with our Mentoring Connector, this is a national database of mentoring programs and mentoring opportunities for adults to be mentors, but also for young people to find your program. So we manage the regional version of the database. So if you're not already in there, get in there. And then, of course, we offer trainings like these. We offer regional roundtables to connect with you locally in your local context. If you've not already heard about the element of effective practice for mentoring, this is our foundational document that's just recently been updated. I'll send you more information about it actually in our follow-up, but hopefully you're on our newsletter and you're getting all that information because it was just released and it's very exciting. And lots of other things. So we hope that you'll keep in touch with us if you're not already, that you're on our newsletter. But we are really excited to always offer you these opportunities. So hopefully this is not the only time that we have a touch point. And I recognize some of you as well. So I know many of you have been here before as well. So some virtual logistics. We are in WebEx today, which I know is not as familiar as something like Zoom. We find that WebEx works best for us. We appreciate your patience and getting to know this platform. So if you see towards your bottom, you can see where you can, or the bottom of your screen, where you can mute, where you can stop your video, where you can raise your hand, where you can add an emoji. So feel free to send me an emoji right now. And on those three dots, you can click and see what else comes up. Towards the right of your screen, you'll see participants where you can see who's here. You can open up your chat if your chat's not already open already. This is what your chat should look like. You can send emojis, you can send a GIF, you can add someone, tag someone if you're having a conversation with someone. Hi Bear, I see your thumbs up. So yeah, we want to keep the chat lively. It helps us know that we are receiving the information. I don't like to be a stickler about cameras being on and things like that, but your participation in this training is really important to us. And we acknowledge your participation in this training through our Credly badges. So if you've received a Credly badge from us, give me an emoji or talk about it in the chat, but it is a way for us to verify your learning. So we want to ensure that you are participating, that we see you in the chat. That you share when you're prompted to share, and that you're active in things like breakout rooms as well. Because we're using this wonderful service of WebEx, we have a resource called Slido, which allows us to do different kinds of interactive polling and things like that. So there'll be a few ways for you to interact with that, but if you go I'll kind of cue you about what that will look like, but if you go to slido.com, you'll get a code on how to join when we are on a Slido slide. And then you'll get to a screen that kind of looks like this. You will be asked to put in your name and a passcode. You can submit answers to those polls and things anonymously, but again, we ask for your name to verify participation and things like that since we are badging for your learning today. So again, play around. We always want space and grace in the virtual space. So again, also if my sound goes out, there's a microphone issue earlier, please let me know and we can communicate about that. But this is where we are virtually today. And then I want to quickly get into our community standards. So Mentor Maryland DC, when we are together, when we gather, we aim to have this be a really important space for all of us and to create community. We really believe that community is the foundation for all learning, for being seen, for being heard, for being understood, which are all things that we want to do for our young people as well. So we want to do that with you all first. Our community is open to all. Everybody here is welcome, and we also want to acknowledge all of the isms that affect us and our young people and how it affects our work. We encourage you to share openly. I've been talking about participation, but also listen even more openly, right? We always want to be listening first and be open to when maybe you're sharing, may hurt, right? We want to be generous with our assumptions of others. So if we hear something that's surprising of us or surprising to us, we want to, assume best intent. And of course, do not be afraid to ask genuine questions. Questions are a really part of the learning process, right? We ask no matter your role here today, be a host. So when we're in breakout rooms, right, we're all hosting each other in a little smaller community space. So we want to be mindful of how we're treating each other on the call today and our learning. We don't necessarily endeavor to create a safe space, but really a brave space where we can do a lot of learning. And because learning can be challenging and facing new truths can be challenging. So we want to do that today. And I feel we do have some activities that may kind of bring that up. So be mindful of that. And of course, we want this not only to be supportive and educational, but also fun. So please be present, be in community with us this evening, especially because it's evening. And look at us all in the evening doing a bunch of cool stuff together. So let's be mindful of that. I want to quickly go over who I am, who am I and why does it matter, right? So while I am certified in presenting this training content to you today, I like to remind participants that no facilitator comes to the session, any session, without their own personal lens and bias. Being a totally neutral facilitator just doesn't exist. And as much as we try and should try to decenter our personal experiences, we all have a lens that's shaped by our life experiences and our identities. And you can see a little bit about my life experience and my identities here on the screen. You may hear me tell relevant stories about my time working in youth development and in mentoring, but I want to be clear about who you're hearing that from, right? And who I am, what lens I might be bringing. And then this is another reason for the importance and value of your participation, right? That all of us sharing out our thoughts and experiences today is really important so we can get multiple points of view and takes on the topics that we're reviewing today. So again, that's a little about me. Feel free to ask any questions about who I am. Again, I'm happy to answer, but we're going to start to get right in it. So, like I mentioned, our topic today is from Mentor National's Becoming a Better Mentor resource, which you can find at, and again, so many things I say today, I promise I will send in the follow-up, such as the link to the Becoming a Better Mentor resource, which is mentoring.org/better mentor. And I swear once you type it, you'll never forget it. I never do. So this is a research-backed resource. It's available in English and Spanish and on audio for those of us who love audiobooks. And it covers 12 really important topics that are pertinent to any caring adult that wants to support and be there for young people. So I really encourage you to check out the resource. And you can find recordings of us covering other Becoming a Better Mentor topics on the Mentor Maryland DC YouTube channel. So subscribe and keep up with us there. Today we are talking about Chapter 8, which is Honoring Youth Voice and Building Power. And I'll say this is a particularly meaty chapter. We're going to do our very best to get through as much as we can, but I really encourage you to refer to the resource and read through everything it has to offer to supplement what we'll be covering today. So we're going to warm up our brains a little bit to this topic with an activity on the next slide, and this is our first kind of introduction to using Slido. So I want to make sure that we are getting it all together. So you may see popping to the right of your WebEx our first Slido, but if not, oh wait, hold on a second. Make sure I get the right one. Launch. Okay. So hopefully you see this on the right of your screen. If you don't, go to slido.com and enter the code VOICE and you will be able to access the content. So, and I'll just put the Slido link in the chat. So I want you to think back to when you were a child, when you were a young person. Do you remember any adult who treated you like a regular person, not just a kid? So for that smiley side, that's an absolute yes. I definitely remember many adults who did. For the middle, maybe they did some of the time, right? But you can't totally confirm yes, you can't totally confirm no. And then the frowny would be no, definitely not. Adults were not treating me like a regular person, right? They were treating me in some other way. I'll let a few more people answer the poll. Looks like we got about half of us in there. Again, thinking back, do you remember any adult who treated you like a regular person and not just a kid? And I want you to keep that person in mind because we're going to harken back to that and think a little bit more about how that affected us. Interestingly, we're kind of evenly split a little bit. And another thing about this is that all of these results I will also send out with our slides so we can, all of your great contributions, you'll be able to take with you with all of our slides today. So for those coming in, we are answering this poll about who did an adult treat us like a regular person when we were a young person and not just a kid. And again, we are looking pretty split. So I feel free to keep answering as I transition us to the next activity. So often when we ask folks to think about important people, right, to think about someone who did this for us, well, the first thing that comes to mind is how it made us feel. So on our next slide, we're going to be doing a little word cloud to answer that question. So for that adults, those adults that treated you like a young person. Oh, wait, wrong slide, wrong slide. Here we go. In a word, how did it make us feel? So for that adult who treated us not just like a kid, who treated us like a regular person, in a word, how did it make you feel? And you can enter as many words as you'd like. We're going to remember those feelings of the adult who treated us not just like a kid. Respected, empowered, ooh, like a teammate. I like that. Cool. I'll just feel cool. Valued. Valued is showing up big because a lot of people are writing it, right? Important. Great. Heard. Mr. Harris, we're in the chat. Equal, right? Like a human. Wow. Mature, right? Helps us feel more mature when adults take us seriously. Cared for. Ooh, we're blowing up. Friendly. For elders, like we're treated with respect. Helps feel like a person. Oh, Jen's writing in the chat. Helps feel like an asset. Great. I'll get the last few folks typing to submit your answers. Like we belong. Of course, belonging we know is so important for our young people. And we want to keep that in mind. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So as we transition to this, I want to, we've thought a little bit about how they made us feel, right? And often when we ask that question, or when we think about, again, important people, and right now we're talking about the adults who treated us not just like a kid. So what exactly did they do? Thinking about what specific actions did they take that made us feel those feelings? So the adults that treated you like a regular person, what did they do that was different from most other adults? What actions did they take? What did they say? How did they treat you? How is it different than other adults? So you can use more than one word. Feel free to submit. Just as they put me in charge. Yes, we're going to talk a lot about that. Oh, they spoke in a regular voice, not a baby voice. Oh, that is so good, right? Are we literally infantilizing our young people by how we speak to them? Ask for my input. Simple as that. Are they checking in and asking what the young person thinks? Listen to me when I talk to them, which we hope from all adult youth relationships, right? But it is simple and it is meaningful. Julia says they allowed me a platform to share my story. Asked me what I thought or wanted. Listened, period. A lot of listening. We're going to talk about listening a lot today. Shared their feelings and listened to mine. Ooh, Alex, a good point. That mutual sharing, that they shared their feelings too. They heard me, they listened. My mentors back then were not different from parents, but all activities were age appropriate. Nice. Allowed me to make my own choices. Talk about the value of giving young people choices. They allowed me to help. Nice. The way they told me stories, not for the purpose of teaching me a lesson. Ooh, that's so good, right? You know, when you know an adult is trying to teach you a lesson and you don't want to hear it because they don't actually care what your thought about the story is. They're just trying to get to this point and make a point. Maybe that point is making you feel bad, right? Or a young person feel bad. Took what I said seriously. They understood me. Nice. Any other thoughts? Does anybody have a story that's coming to mind about this adult who did this for you or treated you this way? Feel free to write in the chat or raise your hand and call off mute. Participated, did not engage only as a bystander. Nice. Dion said, acknowledged my point of view. Awesome. She listened to me and heard me. Right? And it seems so simple. And the things we're going to be talking about today, I don't mean to suggest that I assume that you all don't do this for your mentees, right? But it's about the practice of doing it and reframing the importance of it and how we can strategize to continue to practice and build the skills of honoring youth voice and building their power and building power instead of necessarily empowering, right? That we are helping build young people up. My mentors joined in on the activity. No matter what the activity was, right? It was fun. Love. Thank you. Thank you so much for engaging in our polls. We will be coming back to some, and I'll also I'll leave the Q&A open as well if you want to interact there. But thank you so much for your contributions. They were wonderful. I want you to again keep these folks in mind as we transition into really talking about our topic today. So again, we're talking about becoming a better mentor, honoring youth voice, and building power. This particular chapter, each chapter is written by different experts. I didn't say that before. So this chapter was written by Liz Santiago. I actually know her, so I feel famous by association. And Minnie Chen from Mentor, although some of our other chapters are written from people from universities and organizations, all different kinds of folks. But our chapter today, again, our main focus and point that adults interested in elevating youth voice must learn how to listen critically and be willing to take a step back and share power with young leaders. So while maybe we didn't hear that specifically in our examples that you shared on the previous slide, likely when you think about those folks, they were listening. They're not just listening, right? They were listening critically. They were really paying attention and they were sharing power. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means and how to do it. Take your time. Okay. So in the chapter in the presentation today, we're going to quote young people a lot because while this session is about youth voice, our young people are not here. So we want to incorporate the youth voice. If you read this chapter in the resource, there are even more quotations from young people, and we'll have a few throughout. But we still want to center their voices and their point of view about this topic, right? This isn't for adults to talk about what it means to honor youth voice. Youth have to be central of how we amplify them, right? So I'm going to read this first quote, but later on I might ask someone to come off mute and help me read a quote. But there is a lot of distrust between me and adult figures. I always felt beneath and belittled by authority figures. By having a trusting relationship with my mentors, it taught me to have better relationships with adults later on in life. Now I'm more assertive and more comfortable with adults. Even though there is a certain level of respect I need to give adults, I learned that I also demand a certain respect that young people aren't given just because we are younger. So that is from Sesha, we did a bunch of Youth Voice webinars in 2020, 2021, and you'll see a bunch of quotes from there. So she was on a webinar about maximizing youth voice. So again, our young people are the experts here, which is why we want to refer to them. I think she makes some good points there, and I want you to take that to our next slide. So what do we mean when we say youth voice, and why is it important? Can I have somebody read this first bullet for me? Just come off mute and read for me if you can.
Honoring youth voice and building power can mean many things, from taking a step back and letting youth take charge and planning activities and discussions, to listening to youth interests and stated needs, then making connections to broader context for them, to intentionally creating a relationship dynamic that gives youth a sense of agency.
Yes, thank you so much. So viewing youth as partners allows youth to build confidence in themselves and in their voice. So we're talking about a literal voice, but also, right, just the power of the things they have to say. They become more comfortable in spaces with adults, which we saw in that previous slide, right? It gives them a sense of agency. So again, agency being our power to navigate the world, to make choices, to have control over our lives. And young people, of all people, typically have the least control over their lives, right? They don't really have rights according to the law, right? Adults are in charge of them and things they do pretty much every minute of the day. But we want to give youth a sense of agency when we really think about what it means to honor youth voice. And when we think about you, a mentor, what you need to have, and that is unconditional positive regard for your mentee, which we'll get a little bit more into what exactly that means, but also a belief that all youth are poised for greatness. So challenge and doing some reflection on how do I actually view young people, and am I making that generous assumption that we talked about in the community standards, right? That youth are poised for greatness and to help and be contributors to our wonderful world. So think about that a little bit. And then your role as a mentor then becomes as a knowledgeable navigator, a non-judgmental sounding board, and a partner whose goal is to affirm, support, and encourage. So becoming a better mentor refers to being a navigator and a guide in a lot of its chapters, but specifically in the goal setting and support chapter, which is chapter 10. So that may be of interest for those of you who are involved in more structured programs with focus on specific goals. But again, we're moving from this place of telling young people exactly what to do, what goals they should have, etc., or telling them our thoughts, our judgments, and rather helping them navigate and being a person that they can rely on because of the knowledge that we have, right? Because typically as time passes on, as we age, we gain more knowledge and have more knowledge to share, but about being alongside your young person and helping them navigate, being a sounding board rather than telling, and things like that. Can I have someone read this next bullet?
Knowing when to lead and when to follow, want to share your point of view, and want to open yourself to a different way of thinking requires practice and skill.
Yes, thank you. So let me poll the group. Who might struggle with this, right? Who finds it difficult sometimes to know when to take the lead or when to let your young person follow, or has a compulsion, right? A lot of us have that writing reflex to share our point of view and get our young person on the right track, often coming from a place of care, but that we want to, but then we're kind of stepping on their voice and their agency in the process. We're going to do a little bit of reflection later about being open to different ways of thinking. But the good news is about everything having to do with youth voice and building power is that this is a practice, which means it's something we can continue to get better at, and that it's a skill, right? So it can be learned, it can be taught. We don't want to give up on our fellow adults who might not be doing the best job, right, at honoring youth voices, but we want to feel encouraged that this is something that we can practice and a skill that we can build. And then lastly, honoring youth voice and building power can look different depending on your mentee's age, as well as the program and community context. So context means everything, right? Basically always, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But as you take in the information today, I want you to think about and reflect, how does this relate to your context? What is the context of which you are mentoring or of which you are building relationships with young people? And how can you translate the information for your context? And then again, why is it important? Youth need and want to know that they have power and can leverage the confidence they are building in their mentoring relationships toward achieving their broader goals. They are looking for partners and guides who see the greatness within them and are committed to nurturing that greatness. So I have a quote from another young person, if somebody can come off mute and read for us.
The relationship that my mentor and I have has taught me that collaboration is important and sharing power is even more important. I think it's important that adults and elders and mentors guide us, don't suffocate us, and join us as we are going through this. Support us.
Yes, thank you so much for reading. Also, I'm hearing my dog running crazy in the hallway, so if you hear that, apologies. So yeah, any thoughts about this quote? And actually, let me, any thoughts about this quotation from Girl and Naya here? And no worries, because, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
So my interpretation is basically that our mentees don't want us to drive for them, but they want us to be a trusty passenger, I think, while they're in the driver's seat. And, you know, as the quote says, guide them, but let's try not to make their decisions for them or kind of cut off their opinions just because we have some years on them and we might know a little bit better. So let them make their own mistakes.
Right. Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. And even this thought of that, like, right, is it that we know better or is it that we have more experience? And that, of course, it doesn't mean that we let young people, not let young people, that we watch young people make terrible mistakes or dangerous mistakes when we could have helped or intervened, but that we are giving that support and information from that passenger seat, which was a great analogy. Thank you for that. And that we're not, again, the suffocation that you're talking about, it's very visceral, that kind of description. But how can a young person, again, have agency, have choice, make decisions for themselves, which someday they will have to do, right? Eventually, we all become adults and we have to make decisions that are difficult about our lives. And suddenly young people, you know, when they graduate high school or make that transition to post 18, right, suddenly they have a lot more decisions to make. And if they don't have practice making those decisions, the power of making those decisions, then it's going to be a difficult transition. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Sarah. And we're going to transition this into sharing power, since it was kind of addressed in that quote, right? So the practice of sharing power, or what we call share power here, comes from Search Institute's developmental relationship framework. So Search Institute is a wonderful organization that does tons of research about young people and what we can do to ensure all young people have positive outcomes. And they created the developmental relationship framework, which we'll look at in the totality on the next slide, but it includes 5 elements expressed in 20 specific actions that are proven to catalyze young people's lives. So those 5 elements are express care, challenge growth, provide support, expand possibilities, and share power. So they say that sharing power involves specific actions such as showing mutual respect, giving young people voice in decisions, collaborating and solving problems, and creating leadership opportunities for young people. So from the voice of the young person, imagine your mentee saying to you, treat me with respect and give me a say. And we'll go over those 4 actions that we can take, right? So treat me with respect and give me a say. And actually, let's make this slightly interactive. As I go over each one, give me an emoji about whether you think you're very good at doing this, or the emoji that represents how you are at doing this, right? So let's start with respect. And again, from the voice of a young person, respect me, take me seriously, and treat me fairly. Give me an emoji that tells me how good you feel at doing that, right? Do you always do this? Do you take young people seriously? Do you treat them fairly? Yeah, Sarah's feeling good about it. Include me. Involve me in decisions that affect me. This is one that I know can be difficult for adults. My sisters, or I have nephews, right? And I'm often encouraging them to include my nephews in the decision making, which is hard. It's very hard for parents, but nevertheless, mentors who are typically poised, right? We're poised to help them to navigate and give advice, but are we including young people in the decisions that affect them? Collaborate. Work with me to solve problems and reach goals. So often, and hopefully, if you're with a mentoring program, your program sets you up to do this, right? But again, if you came to my session, did you talk about this last week of providing emotional support? I don't know. Some session I was doing recently, we were talking about the writing reflex, the want to help put young people on the right track, to tell them how to do things, to tell them the right choice. But really, sharing power is about collaboration. And this is how our young people learn. We're going to work with them and help them reach their goals. And then lastly, let me lead. Create opportunities for me to take action and lead. So it seems like some of us, feel like we have this experience, and I want you to think about, again, as we're going to transition into a self-reflection in a few slides. Who does this? Do you do this? How do you do it? Who did this for you? Keep that in mind, because we're going to do kind of an assessment of our unconditional positive regard in a few slides. So that's share power. And again, sharing power is from the developmental relationship framework. And here that is at a glance. So you see the 5 elements here. Here is sharing power, expand possibilities, express care, challenge growth, provide support. And then we have what the benefits are, again, from research, from practicing developmental relationships. So that includes social emotional competencies, academic outcomes, or positive academic outcomes, right? And other thriving indicators. If you are interested in a full training on the developmental relationship framework, which we can do. I was trained by Search Institute many years ago, but it is a full-fledged, long, big topic that we're just touching on. If you are interested in attending a training like that, please let us know in the training survey, which will be emailed to you after today's training. But we love this framework. Obviously, we'll be happy to bring that information to you. But again, this is it at a glance, and we talked a little bit about sharing power, right? So I want to transition us into unconditional positive regard, which we heard a little bit about when we talked about what honoring youth voice means. So I'm going to read another quote from a young person, because we're going to hear from our young people today. So Kendall says, "My mentor did a great job breaking down those boundaries. Every time I would greet my mentor, she would greet me with, "Hello, my friend." Just her letting me know that we were in fact friends and that she wasn't just an adult telling me what to do, that meant a lot to me. So you'll see in the orange here, this is the definition of unconditional positive regard from psychologist Carl Rogers. When you have unconditional positive regard for someone, nothing they can do could give you a reason to stop seeing them as human and lovable. It does not mean that you accept everything they do, right? But that you accept who they are as a person. So the mentoring relationship may be one of the few places where a young person can be their authentic self with an adult, and we want them to feel safe and be accepted for who they are. And what we find with unconditional positive regard, and I know we also touched on this if you came to providing emotional support and empathy, right, is that when we do this, when we practice unconditional positive regard and we practice empathy and things like that, young people are more likely to ask for our support and ask for what we think, right? And to ask us to help them navigate. So again, this is something that we can practice and helps us honor their voice and encourage them to seek the assistance when they need it and have the agency to do so. So when I read this quote and when I think about unconditional positive regard, I think about, my first mentor who was a natural mentor. I wasn't in a mentoring program, but I'll say I was about 16, 17. I was feeling very disempowered as a young person. I had a very negative self-view, not really just of myself, right? But about young people. I felt very disrespected by adults. If I felt disrespected by a teacher, I would not perform. I really didn't feel like adults respected young people at all. I in general felt, again, very disempowered. So I was participating in my youth group at my church, and we had a new youth pastor who we had finished an activity. He had heard me share, and he came up to me and he introduced himself, and he said, "Hey, I love what you had to say. I would love if you could help me plan something." And he got me in. I was shook. I was shocked that an adult was A, acknowledging my contributions, but B, was asking for my help, because I honestly had the point of view that young people can't and aren't allowed to do anything or to create anything or to be a part of making something. So his how he came to mentor me, well, one, got me to be a very effective volunteer to say the least, but also helped me access my own power, helped me get into mentoring is where that kind of story goes, because I came to acknowledge what he did for me, I wanted to do for other people. But he really helped me to feel powerful, to feel that I had agency, to feel like my voice mattered. And he was somebody that, again, had this unconditional positive regard for me. And therefore, he had a deeper relationship with me more than other adults. And it was very, very powerful, to say the least. So, I want to again kind of think about who did this for you as we get into our next kind of practice around unconditional positive regard. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go through this kind of personal assessment to consider how good we are at kind of practicing unconditional regard, right? And how kind of ready we are to do it. So this has been adapted from the Youth Service America's Youth and Adults Working Together, Integrating Youth Voice and Leadership into Programs. So it's going to be a bunch of self-reflection questions, which we will which are on the screen. For some reason I thought I had to click. There they are. So what I'm going to do when I asked folks coming in at the beginning to grab some paper and a pen, but what I'm going to ask you to do is to take some time to start to answer these questions. I'll give you at the time. Okay, we're actually doing pretty good time. I'm going to give you at least 5 minutes. Oh gosh, I'm trying to set a timer to start to answer these questions. If you're writing it down, if you're typing it, if you're putting a note on your phone, I'm going to turn on some music, give you some time to answer these questions, and then we're going to get into breakout rooms to start to share with each other. Drop a 1 in the chat if those directions sound good to you. We know what we're doing.
Freely
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'm about to turn on some music and a timer. Start to write your answers to questions. There are a lot here. You can pick and choose to start, and then I'll open up breakout rooms in about 5-ish minutes.
This meeting is being recorded and summarized.
Welcome back, everyone. I would love to hear a few folks share what they talked about, what they realized about themselves, what they heard from someone else that was meaningful. Feel free to come off mute, write in the chat, raise your hand. But yeah, I'd love to hear how that went for a few of you today.
Overall, it was just insightful. Like, yes, we started off with the questions, but we bridged out more into the work we are doing. We got to learn more about the organizations we are in, and ultimately just making a natural connection. So thank you.
Great, yeah, and we will have another opportunity for you guys to connect with those same groups. But yeah, any other takeaways or reflections from doing this assessment? How do you feel about your ability to practice unconditional positive regard? Sarah is giving props to her her breakout room. They talked mostly about question 2 and 3. So do you appreciate and seek to understand different perspectives, especially when they are unlike anything you have personally experienced? And do you respect adults and youth equally? Yeah, any takes on those questions?
I think the fourth question was very, I think it was a good question to ask. Are you willing to learn? No, which one was it? Hold on.
You got it, yeah.
It was, yeah, it was, no, it was the second question. Do you appreciate and seek to understand different perspectives, especially with like anything you have personally experienced? I think the culture shock that can come from that experience is something to that can really initially you can kind of be taken aback from it, and everybody doesn't process those moments the same. So I think as I was analyzing the question, it was very insightful because the question becomes sometimes how do you deal with a child that you have no way to relate to their understanding, I mean to their life and what's happened to them, and and sometimes you can be so internal or internally focused on trying to figure that out that you don't recognize that you have a community of people around you that may have those answers that you can connect to be able to help that child, or to help you to be better for the people that you're with. So I think that question was one that really had me thinking a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, I hope you guys will take these questions with you and do some more thinking on them, right? But as it relates to question 2, which Gian was going over, when I used to help run a mentoring program and train mentors, I would always say, be prepared to hear something that might shock you or that like you've not heard before, or a perspective that you don't share, right? And are you willing to do that listening? And I think too about when we potentially find a mentee who does appear to have similarities with us. They look like us, they're from the same neighborhood, we went to the same school. I always remind folks that the experience that you do not share with the young person is that they are a young person living those things right now, right? And like the things we saw on the screen earlier, right? If I saw a third generation Italian American teenager right now who is they, them, blah, 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 it doesn't mean that we're exactly the same. And I should be open to hearing different points of view, even if it appears we have similar experiences. And being open to that is a practice. And Eugenia, right? Great question to pre-screen candidates for mentors. Yes, we should always be asking a mentor, why do you want to be a mentor? Right? What is motivating you to be here? And that is actually, that question specifically is a best practice. So yeah, great catch there. Right. Why do you want to be a mentor and what is motivating you? Are we centering youth and their power and their potential? Awesome. Again, please take this with you, share it out. And it's in the resource as well. But I want to get us to kind of our next kind of case study. But what else can we do to practice honoring youth voice? We talked about sharing power. We talked about unconditional positive regard. Provide your mentees with choices and respect their choices. So give your mentee options and deciding how you'll spend your time together, what your activities you would do, adapt to the developmental age of your mentee, right? How you do this will look different over time. I always say, right, if you're working with younger people, by younger people, I mean, let's say an elementary schooler, right? An elementary schooler might not be the most reliable person to ask what they want to eat, right? They might be, always say candy when we're talking about eating lunch together, things like that, right? So, right, when we think about sharing power and giving choices, what's relevant to the developmental age for our young person? And then kind of what we were just talking about, right? Being open to learning from your mentee. As a mentor, expressing your genuine enthusiasm and openness to learn from your mentee, as we heard in that quote earlier, helps break down this power dynamic between adults and youth. Naturally, there are power dynamics between adult and young people, period. It's how our society is structured, right? Again, adults have all of the power. So mentors can use the resources, platforms, and networks to which they have access to connect with their mentee, elevate their mentees' voices and ideas, and encourage their mentees in leading and actualizing and implementing their ideas and goals. And I have another quote here from Kindle, which we reviewed a little bit earlier. Practicing proactive listening and actively asking questions and seeking insights. Again, I'm going to encourage you to look in the resource. It has questions listed and are really in-depth about how to do this. But listening proactively and asking questions to learn about your mentee's perspective will keep you from assuming you know what is best for your mentee and telling them what to do. And then hold yourself and your mentee accountable for next steps, right? So accountability goes both ways. Be sure to follow up with your mentee after you've worked together to discuss a problem. We talked about collaborating over problem solving. If you've helped them decide on a course of action, follow up, right? Create a plan together, implement it based on your mentee's feedback, right? How did it go from their point of view? And help them feel respected because it shows that you value what they have to say.
Okay. Oh, that.
Sorry about that, Andrea. Again, we'll go beyond simply just validating, right? Validating and affirming is one thing, but taking action to support takes it to that next level. And then regularly checking in and encouraging mentee feedback. So for our programs, making space for that, but also providing opportunities for your mentee to give you feedback on how you can be a better mentor, right? Whether that's during your meeting or, in a written format, without ever forcing them to respond, right? Give your mentee time to process how they might feel. And again, do that follow up and that checking in to see if there's something that they've been thinking about or need more time to process. So I want to quickly go over some pitfalls to avoid, which I feel like we've kind of gotten to in our conversation so far. Be prepared to be challenged by young people and what they may say, right? As youth begin to find their voice, they will demand to be heard. And again, likely because they have not been heard in their life and how their young people's lives are structured to be, right? This is the point. As long as there's mutual respect, it's okay to disagree on approaches or goals. Being an active listener and guide, right? We're talking about being a guide will help. So if you're working on a project, creating norms for decision making can help mitigate some challenges. Check your biases. I was talking about the lenses we all bring earlier. So it's important for young people to know that their voice, their culture, their identity are of equal importance to anyone else, including their mentors. And then of course, don't patronize, which maybe we hope that we don't do, but we've observed adults doing. Maybe it happened to us, which we kind of reviewed in our poll earlier. Don't pretend you're interested in learning more when you really aren't, right? This is a practice that has to be genuine. Youth can tell if you're patronizing them. They can sniff you out. Youth sniff out inauthenticness and all the time. So be mindful of that. I want to take us into our next activity, which is we're going to hear an example of great active listening, and then we're going to break down what active listening is. So this is a story from StoryCorps from a teacher named Celeste Davis Carr and her student Aaron. So Aaron shared with his teacher Celeste in a StoryCorps recording that he was homeless. And what we're going to listen to is their follow-up interview. So I'm going to play the audio, and then I also have the transcript as well. So I'm going to drop the link to the transcript in the chat. But I want us to hear their voices and what they have to say. So I'm going to play that now. And while I do, think about these questions on the screen. We're going to use them to debrief what we hear. So again, this is the conversation after Aaron had revealed that he was homeless and his teacher heard.
I am attending Corliss High School. I'm just going through a rough time. Basically homeless for 5 months. I had to sleep outside, sometimes with nothing to eat. Just kind of ashamed. I still am ashamed.
It was only after hearing that recording that Aaron's teacher, Celeste Davis Carr, learned that he was living on the streets. They recently sat down face to face to talk about Aaron's struggles.
When you shared your StoryCorps recording with everyone, how did you feel, Aaron?
I felt awkward, like a big load was let off. Because, I just said it. I don't know what made me say it, but I'm like, let me just be honest and just get it out.
I was scared because I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do. But at the same time, I felt I had an obligation to try my best to help you.
Yeah, I didn't even know you actually listened to that one.
I listened to all of them, Aaron.
Yeah, I didn't really think that I would ever tell a teacher, but it makes me know that you're special because you care. Like, you talk to me and make sure that I'm cool. Because sometimes kids were bullying me, call me a freak of nature, throwing chairs, throwing glass and stuff at me.
I've had to deal with some bullying issues when I was in school, but not to the extent that you have. I was always picked on because I was a tomboy.
You seem pretty cool. I didn't think no one would mess with you.
So overall, how do you feel? You have more friends this year?
Yes, I have more friends this year.
So it's better than last year?
Yeah. I'm in a foster home now. Been since October.
Do you feel different living in a foster home?
It's good, actually. I feel comfortable where I am now. It kind of feels like home.
So can I tell you one thing that I really admire about you, Aaron? Because I've never told you. Do you know how strong you are?
No.
You never realized that.
No.
But you have a strength that no matter what anyone says about you or they do to you, you don't change who you are as a person. And a lot of people don't have that strength. So I admire that about you.
Thank you.
Don't make me cry again. Okay? I want to see you happy. Just your smile is the best moments of you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, thoughts, reactions. I want us to consider these questions, right? Why was it powerful for Celeste to listen to Aaron and his story? Yeah, Sarah, totally. How did Celeste show Aaron that she was really listening, right? And why do you think it was important to Aaron that Celeste listened to him and his story? Feel free to come off mute, raise your hand. I'll leave a note in the chat.
Just answer the second question.
Yeah, any of these questions. Go ahead.
She showed emotion and she was very genuine in her responses. I liked how she related to him and also how she uplifted him at the end.
Yes, thank you so much, right? She was genuine. We just talked about authenticity. And then she uplifted as well. We talked about earlier seeing the potential for greatness in young people, and she made that quite clear. I just saw someone's hand up. Please share. Oh, Alex, that was your hand that I saw.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Well, I thought, he sure is a special young man, as she said at the end there of the conversation. I mean, he must have come a long way, perhaps. I don't know what he was like before, but Boy, he was so beautiful, so respectful, so thoughtful, and he sure is off to a good start just from one person, caring about him, the impact that had. He'll have his struggles, but he's got great ground under his feet. So I was very moved by that strength that she identified.
Yeah, and thank you for making that point, Aaron, right? We're talking about one person who really validated and affirmed this young person and the power of just one person doing it, right? So if that person is you, the mentor, again, what we heard earlier is that when we do this for young people, it opens them up to having better relationships with other adults. So that can be really powerful. Yeah, and then Eugenia, I see your hand up.
Yes, the part that really moved me was how you could tell she'd been watching him because she asked him specifically, did he have more friends this year than last year? So she has really been in tune with him. However, she didn't know that he was homeless. But I also like how she related herself to him in the same situation that, she was bullied like he was bullied, but in a different way. So she made that human connection. She just, you could just tell she's very, very genuine as a mentor, just as a person. So thank you for playing that. Now I'm gonna go back to crying.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Right. Again, that genuineness and really seeing him and being seen, right? Being seen and belonging is really powerful for young people. And it's not enough for the adult to just be doing it, right? It's the communication of it to the young person that helps them feel it and helps it be really powerful for them. And again, for their voice to be important, that they might share something as serious, right, as not having a home. And there's likely a build up into that point that he felt comfortable to share that with his teacher. Yeah, thank you. And then one more. Okay, Patricia, I see your hand up.
I'm going to ditto what she said because that's what I was going to say. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to keep us moving because we have less time left than I'd like. So again, just reflect on active listening, what we saw Celeste doing and how we can do it. So again, active listening involves attentively seeking to understand a speaker's message rather than passively hearing the words that a speaker says. Right? So we saw how good, or we heard how good Celeste was as listening by what she said back. Active listeners provide verbal and nonverbal feedback to show their sincere investment in what the speaker is sharing. So in that scenario, right, we told them what we heard, right? We can imagine that she was also and had a history of communicating nonverbally as well that made Aaron feel comfortable. And then active listening can help to build trust within a conversation, right? Allowing the speaker to communicate more easily, openly, and honestly. And I think we saw what we saw and we felt, right? How much trust had to have been built over time to get to this point where Aaron was sharing his story and she was affirming his story. So I'm looking at what we have left and our timing considerations. I'm going to share a link with you all. So I was like taking my time today and I should have moving a little faster, but I'm loving our conversation. So if in the resource, there is a case study, actually two case studies. This is one of them. And this link will take you to a document with the case study and with some questions. I'm going to leave this link open for you guys. We don't have exactly enough time to break out and fully review the case study. But what I encourage you to do is to read through these case studies and consider this question. So this is a story between a mentor named Sandy and a young person named Marie. Not these people. This is just a photo. I don't know what Sandy and Marie look like, but Marie is a first-time mentor who's been matched with Sandy, who is a young person, a middle schooler. And essentially, this is a case study for you to troubleshoot their relationship and answer these questions. You'll see at the bottom the questions: why does Sandy not feel comfortable with her mentor, Marie, to share about her life, which I think is a scenario we often may hear from mentors or find ourselves in, right? Why is my mentee not sharing with me? What are some things Marie could do to change the dynamic of her relationship with Sandy? So, right, what is Sandy's agency as the mentor to improve the dynamic of the relationship? And then what are some signs that Marie could pay attention to? We talked a little bit about Celeste being attuned. How can Marie pay a little bit more attention to realize that Sandy isn't getting what she needs from the relationship? So I'm going to leave that link with you, editable. I would encourage you to, if you work with other mentors, to review the case study and answer those questions. So if you work at a program, review it with your colleagues and work through it. But I think it is a really important story and case study to review, because I think it is kind of, there's elements of it that are quite common, or maybe that we've even faced ourselves. And now, with the knowledge of everything we've talked about so far, we can find a little bit of better answers and help somebody troubleshoot. So again, for my folks who supervise mentors, again, this can be really powerful of how you can coach mentors to get through these kind of rough patches in relationships where it's not quite as developmental as we would like, or the young person isn't feeling as honored and as centered as they could be. So I'm going to leave that with you guys. Again, these links will be in the slides when you click through the slides, when you get them. So that is there for you all, and maybe we'll revisit it another time. The training could be twice as long, but you know, I'm not trying to keep you guys forever. Some contextual considerations, some of which we've talked about a little bit, right? So again, everything we've talked today, you have your personal context of which you're a mentor to your mentee, but some general contextual considerations, right? Your mentee's age, we've talked a little bit about this, but right, for younger youth versus older youth, it will look different. And but we know that providing choices and activities and asking questions are ways to honor youth, gain their trust, engage their intent and interests. But for our young people, it can look a little bit different. So for our younger youth, that could involve giving them more choices, because it's often, you know, when you ask a young person what they want to do and you leave it open-ended and they're like, as if they've never done anything ever before and don't want to know what they like, right? Often giving options and things like that can be really important when allowing them to make a choice. But for older youth, it's important to move on from not only providing options and asking questions, but also actually allowing them to ask their own questions and make their own decisions and create their own plans and execute these plans as the main driver. To go back to the analogy earlier of you being the passenger. As our young person gets older, we move more towards that passenger seat. Adolescence is a critical time for young people to have these experiences, to build their confidence and leadership skills. So we want to make efforts to cultivate their self-advocacy skills, give youth space to identify issues that matter to them, and brainstorm with them how they can achieve their goals or work to create change. And then again, where you're mentoring. Are you part of a program, or what we would call a natural mentor, like the mentor that I talked about earlier? He just kind of appeared in my life. That can be a neighbor, that could be a teacher, somebody outside of a program. But of course, in a program, you may have program staff who can help you navigate issues, or send you to trainings like this, right? And how to support and build and learn with your mentee. Right, you may have a young neighbor who seeks you out for advice, and sometimes you might feel confident in the counsel you give, and other times you may need more reflection. In either case, the goal is the same, right? We don't want to stifle our young people. We don't want to overwhelm them or judge them. Instead, we want to listen and get additional support if needed. So, right, even if you are a natural mentor without a program, one, Mentor Maryland DC is here for you, so please reach out. But seek advice. Follow what you're going to preach, right? That you seek help and ask others for their expertise. So keep that in mind. I do want to get us to our last kind of brainstorm poll. So I am skipping over a slide, which you will get and does match the resource as well. But I'm going to launch this last slide so I can get everyone's point of views here about what and how we can do this. So in what way can active listening help us honor youth voice and begin to empower our mentees? So feel free to submit your answers from everything we've talked about today. What ways can active listening specifically help us honor youth voice and help us to empower our young people? We're going to leave on this tonight. Take your time thinking about how active listening is one of the many elements we talked about tonight, can help us honor youth voice and help empower our young people. And I see y'all typing, thank you. Right, can help us validate them. People want to feel validated for who they are, what they have to say, their ideas. And we heard a piece of that in every youth quote we read tonight, right? That they felt validated by their mentors, by adults. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Eugenia wrote in the chat, it shows genuine care and concern, letting youth have a voice that must be heard, right? Again, going beyond just listening, active listening takes us kind of that next step that young people feel centered and their voice is worth listening to. Mentees can start to believe that there are positive adults who care out there in the world, right? And not give up. Right. My husband is a high school teacher. Many of his students in his class, right, have been betrayed or not trusted or looked over by adults. And he works hard to build relationship, to actively listen, to center young people, so they can, right, see that there are positive adults who care and want to help them. Brenda, all through perspective and always being open to feedback and change. At the end of the day, people want to feel valued and important. Yes. Kathleen, I value your opinion and see what you have to offer. Again, that process of seeing young people. Active listening will let the youth know that they're seen and heard instead of having their thoughts and needs being assumptions. Yes. Brittany, it validates their input and shows that they matter, that they are working, that you are working with them, right? And not people sitting to power over or talking around them. Yes. How many times we caught ourselves doing that, right? Lets them know you care about them. Thank you, Mike. And Laura lets them know you are genuinely interested in them and what they have to say. Yes. Thank you. I see a few more folks typing, so I still have time. But you guys are doing great. I can see what we're learning, you know, being reflected back. And again, all of this tying back to that original question that we asked about, did adults do this for you growing up? And if not, how can we do it for young people? Or if they did, how can we emulate them, right? Breaking down what were they doing that fits into sharing power, that fits into unconditional positive regard, that we can emulate in the way that we mentor now. Dion. It models for them that an adult can value their perspective. Yes, right? Again, that affirmation that there are adults who want to listen.
Hello?
Allows that their critical thinking and instincts can lead to quality results in their lives. Yes, who came off mute? Please share.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. This is Jaleel Lieberman. My computer died. I just want to confirm that this meeting will go to the email,
Yes.
even though I'm still no longer here.
Yes, it will. Thank you, no problem.
Perfect. I just
Yeah,
wanted clarification. Appreciate it.
You're good. I see one more person typing, so I want to give them time so we can review their contribution and then we will wrap up. Esther, youth feel that their opinions matter, and the more questions we ask and show them that we are actively listening and want to hear what they have to say. Yes. Thank you guys so much for your participation today and great and wonderful ideas. I'm seeing some questions in the Q&A, which I'll address in a second. So thank you for being here. Like I said, our training evaluation, it will be automatically sent to you at 7:30, so you should see it in your email. And I'll send it again when I send my follow-up email, but I'm going to drop this link in the chat as well, or you can scan the QR code. We do appreciate you doing a survey about your experience today. And if there's any training topics that you want us to cover, please let us know, because that helps us create our training calendar. We have more trainings coming up. we have our annual girls event coming up for Women's History Month, which is really exciting. So please follow our newsletter and socials for updates there. Again, we have the opportunity for technical assistance that we would love to offer and cost nothing. So again, keep in touch about that. We have our regional roundtables. If you've not come to one yet, I encourage you to go to the one in your region and connect with folks in your area. And then I encourage you to go to our website where information about all of this lives. We've been working hard to update our website to ensure that you guys have all the information that you need about us and what we can do for you. So, yes, that's all that I have for you all today. I will send you a follow-up email with everything within a week. And I appreciate you so much for being here and expanding your learning this evening. So thank you guys so much.